Hello and welcome. This is Freedom Master Vedant Goswami. Uh, from today, we'll start looking at the games of the 2023 World Chess Championship that started between Ian Nepomucci of Russia and Ding Liren of China. So the first game was played yesterday. We'll do a small recap of the game to see how it went. The game ended in a draw, but it had some interesting moments, which we'll look at as we go through the game. Okay, so let us dive right in. So Ian Nepomucci is white and Ding Liren is black. And the game started with e4, e5, nf3, nc6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, nf6, castles, bishop e7, and bishop c6. So a slightly delayed capture on c6 is played sometimes, but not one of the main lines of Ruy Lopez. So it kind of converted into the Berlin defense in some move order. So d into c6 and rook e1. It's a very simple move with the idea that, white has supported the pawn and is now threatening to capture the pawn on e5. And if we do it directly right now, it is a simple exchange of pawns. So uh, I was surprised to read a lot of commentary in social media and even other websites about rook e1 being a very strange move, but it strikes as very simple and with this very simple and common idea in this opening of simply supporting your pawn to be unable to capture the pawn on e5. So, and d7, Ding supports the pawn and Ian goes d4, captures, all regular stuff, castles and bishop f4. It's a very logical development pointing at the weakness on c7, which is kind of fixed right now, not so easy to move, always remains a target. And of course, bishop d6 is not uh, wants to be played, but it just loses a pawn. So yeah, it does gives black a defensive task for a very long time. So, nc5, queen e3, and bishop g4. And here, of course, there are many moves. The knight can come to support. The knight can come to c3, and knight e5 is there. Ian went knight d4, and the idea is, I believe that after h3 and the bishop goes, knight gets a very nice jump to f5, which can be a very potent and powerful position for the white knight, and can lead to some direct attacking chances or some tactics against the black king. So Ding goes queen d7, knight c3, rook a to d8. Here Ian played nf5. There was a very interesting and deep tactics at this moment, which was pointed out by some commentators, and it was quite interesting to look at. So the move is h3. This is the move which Ian could have played, and the idea being, if black goes for queen into d4, here the move nd5, a brilliant intermezzo, wins the game immediately, because suddenly the connection between the rook and the queen is lost, and black can do no better than capture this, and then white simply captures the bishop and now captures the queen with the bishop. And if you see, black has two pieces which are en prize under attack. Both cannot be protected, and black loses a piece. So a very interesting piece of tactics which was there, was a possibility, but did not happen in the game. So in the game, Ian played nf5 and ne6 was played. If he had, if Ding takes, this is a possibility, and rook f to e8. One interesting possibility was f6. The idea to deflect the bishop, because bishop takes queen into c5 wins the game. and bishop f8 is possible, holding everything together, and maybe white can continue with queen g3, and we can have an interesting game because this is not so much of a so maybe black can simply continue with g6 maybe, and it's a game. So this happened in the game n e6, knight into e7, queen e7, bishop g3, bishop h5, and f3. So uh, a bit of thing to understand in this structure, in these typical structures, is that white does claim a long-term advantage because of his slightly better pawn structure, because he has a king side majority and 4 versus 3, while the black's extra pawn on the queen side is doubled. So white basically says it is of little or no value, and because it does not uh, give the possibility for black to create a pass pawn. So that is the basic argument in the game. White is claiming that he has a small but long-term advantage because of the better pawn structure. So f6, h3. So there's a small consolidating phase of the game, putting the kings in safe squares and now completing development. And b6, a3, a5, and knight e2. Maybe, a plan for white can be, exchange the knights so that, opposite color bishops are there, and this bishop for white can prove to be much more useful because he is attacking all these pawns which are on black squares. So any small mistake by black can have him lose almost all the pawns on the queen side. So rook into d1, rook into d1, and rook d8. And again, if you are a new learner of any instructive movement, white did not capture rook d8. So if I see all my students, the moment rooks appear against each other, they simply capture. But rook d8 is kind of a positional blunder at this level because you gift opponent the only open line on the board. So uh, Ian, of course, doesn't do that and plays the very standard rook d3. The idea is to fight for the open file by pushing the queen on d2 and then forcing black to capture on d3 so that instead of black's queen, it is white's queen which controls the open line. So very subtle point and very important to learn for beginners. c5. Now all this structure is fine or is good. So it does two things. It does restrict the white bishop sometimes, but also on the lopside, it is a target. So again, I'm really afraid that, one bad mistake and all the pawns on the black squares fall at the same time. Queen d2 and c6. So again, kind of an inaccuracy because again, it increases the range of the bishop. Besides that, I don't see any particular reason. Okay, so rook into d3, and queen d3, and king h7. So queen d2, yeah, sorry, c6 was played, and then rook into d8, knight d8. See, now again, see, same thing. If black automatically captures with the queen, the game is almost over right now. So because queen d8, queen into d8, knight d8, and bishop c7, and all of the black pawns, the whole structure falls immediately. Okay, and gives white a simply winning advantage. So black does have some defensive task ahead of him, and he has to keep the right pieces. So knight d8 was played, queen f4, and finally Ian gets a chance to infiltrate in the black position. It is an advantageous position for white because the queen is infiltrated, and this bishop is slightly more potent this bishop because it has all the dark squares to attack. So Ding did display some good defense, and I'm sure at some point of time Ian missed the best opportunities to maintain the advantage. Bishop d6, knight g3, f4, a bit of an inaccuracy because it is destroying his own pawn structure, and now e4 pawn can become a target. So white does loosen his position a bit. So let us see h5, c3, preventing the knight from jumping to d4, c4. A good move. So fixing the white pawn structure, and this pawn does remain a target, and it has always these ideas of getting to the pawn. h4, fixing the pawn and doesn't allow black to gain space. Queen d8. Of course, white wants to play on a bit because his pieces at least optically look better and have some good positions. But black position is good and holds with correct defense. So bishop e8, knight f5 looks pretty ominous, looks pretty dangerous. But yeah, so correct move, offering an exchange of the queens because queen and knight were creating some pretty dangerous threats against the black king. Queen d8, queen d8, and now the position simply is too simple, and with correct play from both sides, quickly dissipates to a draw. So bishop, knight, yeah, okay. So interesting because black is not worried about losing of the pawn because he sees the knight can jump over to d3, and there's no way white can defend the pawn on b2. So improves the position of the king, and then d3 after e6. Knight c6, bishop e7, and knight b2. And the game was drawn after this repetition. Okay, so interesting game. White had some opportunities, but this is the first game. Both players, I'm sure, did not want to play too risky chess or take too many chances. And yeah, so Ding displayed some good defense at the end to prevent his position from sliding down. And of course, Ian missed some chances. So, uh, interesting start to the World Championship. And we'll look at the second game when it happens today. I hope you enjoyed this game. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.